We need it. Oxygen. It's why we breathe. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Small Business Stories. You know me, the voice, Dr. LL, Laura Lynn Mears here, founder of Steeris, bringing you amazing guests every week. Today, we've got G. Ranasinha. He is the founder of Kexino, and he's a global marketing strategist. He's known for challenging conventional thinking. Right? My kind of guest. And he helps businesses understand why their marketing's failing. And this is what I love with my book, Misinterpreted. He focuses on how businesses misunderstand how their customers actually make decisions. So this is going to be a fascinating discussion. Gee, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much, Laura Lynn. Delighted to be here. Delighted to be invited.
Well, I love it because our podcast is reaching, the four corners of the globe now. And you're dialing in here from France. So we've got folks who have been representing just about every major country out there on the podcast. And that's really interesting too, because we learn different perspectives about what's going on locally versus where, although most of my guests and myself are based in the US, there's a lot of the action happening, but we're not the only people that are doing small business work, right? So, G, give us a sense of what's going on in your corner of the globe.
Well, I wouldn't say it's our corner of the globe because, yes, I'm based in northeastern France, just on the French-German border. But the team is, it's globally distributed. We're 19 people in 9 countries. 9 of us are in the US. The rest are in Europe, South Africa, Japan and Australia. And 90% of our clients are based in North America. So even though we're theoretically a European-based marketing service provider, as a services company, we're actually, quasi-global. We're primarily focused in the B2B space, so we're working with small to medium-sized companies in selling into B2B, and we help those type of guys and startups as well to produce better, more relevant marketing, right? We're combining things like strategy and branding and, you touched upon it earlier on, a thing called behavioral science, which allows us to put together work that with a goal to increasing awareness, reputation, trust, and most importantly, sales, right? Because sales is what it's all about, right?
Indeed, it's all about conversion, right? That last piece. We can sit here and, engage in all kinds of puffery to whatever end, but if it doesn't lead to some conversion, some call to action that drives through behavioral change and awareness for people to do something where there's benefit, then what's the point, right? So I didn't realize that the bulk of your clients were based in North America. My air
Yeah,
there.
absolutely.
So let's flip this around a little bit. So instead of what's going on in your corner of the globe, what are you seeing that's shifting? Because things are happening so quickly, and you've got this, like you said, quasi-global purview now. What do you see that's changing and shifting, and everybody's got to hustle a little to keep up with?
I think there's a number of there's a number of threads which are coming in from various different positions which are culminating in a kind of perfect storm, so which we can look at as either a threat or an opportunity, right? Depends on whether you're a half full or half empty glass of water type of person. But I think it's the inevitable conclusion of a efficiency-driven, pragmatic, software-driven process within marketing that's been going on for probably the last 20 odd years. And what's happened with newer technologies like AI has just had a sort of flywheel effect on that. So what we've got now is the almost democratization of content output, right? It used to be the bigger organizations had a structural advantage due to scale. So things like AI have leveled the playing field. So it's not about quantity anymore. But what it is about is, of course, quality. Because what I think we've got is a situation where these technologies have raised the floor. So it's very hard to see, really bad textual or image output like we used to see, the really dodgy clip art royalty free stuff, which I just think about that one person you see with a headset on the Contact Me page of like 1,001 websites, and you think, hang on, this lady here, this woman must be the hardest working woman on the planet because she's working for so many different organizations. That's been substituted somewhat by AI, but not necessarily good AI, good enough AI based upon people who don't actually have the eye to make a tasteful and objective conclusion on the quality of output. So, like I say, it's raised the floor, so there's less really, really crappy stuff. Sorry, can I say crappy? I'll
Yes, you
ask
can.
what the...
People have
Okay.
used four-letter words, and that's not a
Okay,
four-letter word. So
I
go ahead.
normally check in advance what the what the language conditions are. So if a word slips out, I'll apologise. But so it's raised the floor, but I don't think it's necessarily raised the ceiling. So what we've got is a greater preponderance of mediocrity. If we're averaging to the mean, but as we all know, it's at the periphery where all the clever stuff happens, right? So I think we're in danger of creating more noise, more quantity, but messaging that doesn't actually deliver. It doesn't actually resonate at an emotional level. Which brings us on to this thing called behavioral science, which is looking at the details of how and why people make, in our case, buying decisions. And it's looking at how and why they make it rather than how they think they make such decisions. Because we are our own worst enemy in that respect. So behavioral science recognizes that humans often act based upon unconscious biases and mental shortcuts, which we call heuristics. And most importantly, by emotional triggers, and not by purely rational analysis. Based upon when a marketing message hits you, you could have a very different reaction to that message. A Monday morning message may be received in a different way to a Friday afternoon message. The same message, right? So we use behavioral science principles to craft messages that align with buyers' natural decision-making patterns. Because I think if we can better understand the psychological triggers and the effect of context, we can create messaging for clients that resonate and more deeply and feels more intuitive. Okay, ultimately leading to more effective campaigns, because like we said, that's the goal of all of this stuff. So this sort of stuff is great for differentiating our message in a world where we're increasingly saying the same thing in 101 different ways. Because, like I said, AI and other tools are democratizing messaging. We've all got the same capabilities. We're all putting in the same prompts and getting pretty much the same output. So the only differentiator we have, the only way we can be distinctive, is actually going back to those simple, timeless human truths that resonate and invoke a particular emotional reaction in the minds of our audience. Now, to do that means, obviously, understanding our audience, their hopes, their dreams, their aspirations, what gets them up in the morning, their fears, to the point where we can create messaging and communication that resonates and stands out. Because what's happening with a greater amount of slop, a greater amount of content, is, as I said, most of it is just washes over us. We don't even notice it. So we need to create stuff that stands out, that is memorable, that is salient in the minds of our audience, so that we can influence a buying decision, hopefully in our favour. You can look at behavioural science, the way I tend to describe it, it's like a marketing cheat code, okay? You know, back in the days of old style video games, they used to be able to press a button combination, right? And if you did the button combination fast enough and in the right order, you'd suddenly get 1,000% health, and you'd get the big gun, right, and you'd have all the little prizes that you'd normally take you 27 levels to get to, right? Behavioural science is like a cheat code for marketing, you know? It's the missing link between the technical capability and the actual practical value of AI, okay? The way I like to think of it is if AI is the tool, then behavioural science is the operating manual for the humans that need to use it. So managers who are ignoring it, I think they risk building systems that may be technically brilliant, but are practically useless, because they're not generating the feedback, the intended, expected result. That was a very long explanation, I apologise. But hey, I'm in marketing, what do you expect?
Well, there's that, right? So let me react to what you've just said and make sure I've synthesized it in the right way for our audience. Number one, we still have to connect with hearts and minds. That's the point of marketing. Number two,
Absolutely.
AI, because of it, great. More of us have access to more things and more opportunities to be able to DIY, right? Do it ourselves. But at the same time, work slop and the devolution towards sameness, right? It is not this, it is this, right? All of the language is the same. Every post looks the same.
Right.
That's eroding our ability to stand out and be differentiated. And number three, what we are not collectively doing as good of a job doing, maybe because we're outsourcing the job to AI, we're forgetting about how the customer experiences us and our brand. And so we're not making that connection. Is that the net summary?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the third point is a wider point that we can apply to various, pretty much every core area of the business, and not exclusively within communication. I mean, pricing is marketing, for example. Whether your delivery van has been washed this morning is marketing, right? How somebody answers the phone is marketing. And all of these facets may be from different parts of the organisation, different departments, but the customer doesn't see it that way. The customer has a single relationship with the organisation. And so every facet of that customer experience needs to be consistent and aligned with the values of the brand that we're trying to communicate. And that often doesn't happen because there are a number of different decisions which are made within the organisation where I'm sure marketing isn't even in the room, because it's not seen as marketing. And this comes down to unfamiliarity, if I can put my teeth back in, unfamiliarity with what marketing is. People think marketing is promotion. They think it's ads and social media and stress balls and tote bags and trade shows and videos and blogs and podcasts, right? Which are all part of marketing and are very important parts of marketing, don't get me wrong. But they're a tiny part of what marketing consists of. And people who don't understand the strategic areas of marketing, who don't understand segmentation, targeting, quant, share of voice, all of this stuff that you learn if you've had experience or education in marketing, which unfortunately very few people have, it's no wonder when people are put into these roles and can't deliver from a revenue perspective. It's not their fault, right? They've been told marketing is X. The people who've hired them have assumed marketing is X. And so it's a blind leading the blind slightly.
Now, this whole thing is your core thesis, right? You're always talking about how businesses are conflating and or confusing marketing and promotion. Distill it
Right.
for us, G, and say, hey, small business owners, if you're doing marketing yourself, this is what you need to do in marketing, and this is what you need to do in promotion. Don't confuse the two. What would you say?
Well, I think I keep on reading, pretty much on a daily basis, really. Some total BS written by people who think they have a handle on this stuff and haven't actually got a clue what they're talking about, in that marketing has totally changed. Okay? And I totally reject that premise. Firstly, because I think these people don't know what marketing actually is, right? And like I said, are confusing it with promotion. But also because marketing hasn't changed, because the psychological and emotional drivers that form the basic mental structures of how and why human beings buy things hasn't changed. Hasn't changed for 5,000 years, right? Now, what has changed, of course, are the tactics. Of course. Totally appreciate the tactics we're using today are completely different from what we were doing 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 3 minutes ago, right? But ultimately, the challenge of understanding buyers, the strategic questions we need to ask about target, position and objective remain pretty much the same as they always have done. Now, the execution is altered and will continue to evolve, but the fundamental challenges and the lessons we can learn from the recent and not so recent past, I think, remain pretty much the same. What's happening is that, especially for small business owners, they're confusing marketing efficiency with marketing effectiveness. And these things are very different things. Marketing used to be primarily about persuading people to influence their behavior to deliver a commercial result. As a consequence of that, the best marketers of the day were familiar with concepts such as human behavior, human insight, psychology, call it what you will. But I think we've lost that, and we're now more concerned with efficiency than effectiveness. So before I go any further, let's sort of define what I'm calling efficiency versus effectiveness. Effectiveness is about how well we're doing something to achieve a particular goal, how successful we are in delivering what we set out to do. Okay? Efficiency, on the other hand, is a ratio. Efficiency is about how much input we make to deliver a particular output. So if we can reduce input and maintain output, we have a more efficient system. But it's not about getting the best possible result. It's about doing the same for less. So by chasing efficiency metrics, what inevitably happens, and we can see it today, is that businesses end up looking and saying the same thing as one another. Right? I mean, you look at two businesses in the same category doing two pieces of communication, okay? And I bet you, 10 will get you 5, that if you covered up the logo for those two pieces of communication, the exact same piece of marketing could be used by pretty much either of them.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So, so there's no, it comes back to differentiation and distinctiveness. By pursuing metrics based around efficiency above all else, necessarily we've exorcised creativity out of the equation because it's difficult to quantify. Okay? We can't say, okay, for this particular project, we're going to spend $127 worth of creativity and not a penny more, because it doesn't have an intrinsic value in that way. It's difficult to measure. Okay? So instead of doing the basics of marketing, the research, segmentation, all that sort of stuff, we've come to the conclusion that bad marketing that's more targeted is a better use of resources than great marketing that's spread wider. Which is why we resort to tricks like tracking cookies and remarketing tags and AI and other stuff that have to have. And as a result of that, we've now got things like GDPR and CCPA and PIPA and CPRA and God knows however many other four-letter acronyms, right? So it's like we're focused on getting the pizza delivered as quick as we can without realizing it hasn't been cooked properly, or it's got the wrong toppings on it. We're not doing the base work. We're just clearing our inbox. Because what we're looking for is just like in other areas of the business, we're looking for a data-centric, maybe data-driven, repeatable process. But by doing that, it's one that's devoid of any creativity or resonance. And then we're going to moan and say our marketing doesn't work. Right?
And blame the marketing agency. Now, okay,
Exactly.
right? So towards the goal of differentiation and effectiveness, right, away from efficiency, you've referenced it a few times. It does really come down to understanding consumer behaviors, consumer motivations. So where should small businesses start to get them there towards that understanding?
It's actually very easy. It's 4 words. It's speak with your customers. Because your customers, especially your loyal advocate type customers, want you to do well. They want you to succeed. And they will tell you all that you need to know about that particular customer audience profile, what they look like, people who look and think like them. Now, often what you're doing messaging wise is creating a number of different profiles of customer, because you're not just selling to a very, very niche group of people. But that's fine. You can create multiple messages for multiple people and create multiple campaigns for multiple messages, because you shouldn't be trying to say all things to all people, because that gets us back into this generic vanilla non-remembered quagmire of slop. So we need to be as niche as possible, because that's how we get remembered.
Right.
And repeating what we're saying again and again, even once we're sick to death of saying it. Because the time when we're absolutely sick to death of seeing a particular piece of marketing output, that's exactly the point at which a prospective customer first notices it. Right? Bore them by all means, as long as you bore a hole.
You've also, wanted to pull on the thread, mentioned that we kind of default to tactics, right? Whether it's tools, tips, trickery, but like ads, click funnels, ooh, they're everything. Social media, email campaigns. Everybody says, oh, email's not dead, keep going. How can business owners get out of the trap where they're creating motion but not momentum?
This comes down to who's actually driving the tactical execution. Because usually within the business, depends obviously on the business, the people who are driving the tactical execution are not the people who have actually spoken with customers. It's what they think they would need to see if they were in the shoes of a prospective buyer. But there's this thing called market orientation in marketing, which is TLDR. You are not your target market. The instant you stop being a customer and you start being a vendor, you are now sitting on the other side of the table and you cannot make an objective decision because you know too much and you're looking at things from the wrong end of the telescope. The only way you can make substantive claims about what moves a buyer is by speaking to them and having them involved in the types of communication that you want to push forward. Now, that may not be what the board recommend. It may be not what the CEO thinks is right, but the CEO doesn't pay your salary. Your customers do, right? So, and I often see pushback like that, especially with founder-led CEOs, people who created the company and now still running it, and it's sort of their baby that they've grown to, sometimes of significant size. It's very difficult for many of those profiles of people to be able to be objective and acknowledge that they don't have the answers and that somebody outside can have better ideas as to how to create that communication and influence from within. And it needs to be a certain sort of person. It's very easy, nobody likes an outsider to come in and say, your baby's ugly, right? Nobody wants to hear that. So it has to be that, but unless you get buy-in from the very top, any plans of effectual change within the organization, which needs to happen because, clearly things aren't working, it's just never going to stick, right? Because everybody will look to whoever's at the top and say, well, if he or she's not doing that, then why should I? And then the whole thing just peels away. So there needs to be buy-in from the very, very top. And it is talking about change, okay? Who I think it was Stephen Covey who said, if we keep on doing what we're doing, we're going to keep getting what we're getting. And it's true, right? There needs to be a fundamental change in, not just in process, but in mindset. That's really what marketing is about, is bringing a different mindset to the operations and theory, the ethos, the spirit of how the business is going to be run. It's not about slapping on a new website. That doesn't solve the problem.
As we're heading towards the end of our podcast, just a few more questions here. So
Sure.
A lot of clients and folks that I know, business owners, they've got the illusion of visibility. They're highly visible, but weakly trusted, right? If we get into trust signals, which is one of the things that I'm looking at, how is it that businesses can mistake that kind of attention for influence? And why aren't they focused on the singular goal, which is conversion to revenue? How do you get them to shift that mindset?
I think it's because people are hung up with this word called authenticity. And I think authenticity is a load of BS. We don't want authenticity, okay? I don't want someone to bring their most authentic self to the sales process. If I'm going under the knife and my cardiothoracic surgeon is going through a particular bad breakup, I don't want he or she to be in a bad mood. I don't want to see that. Definitely not. All right? What I do want to see is a veneer of authenticity that aligns with my expectations of consistency. no matter which facet I look at from the organization, the way it's projected to me is consistent. Not authentic, consistent. Authenticity is what you share with your spouse, hopefully, your family, loved ones. But it's not something that you project with the organization, because that's not what they're buying. What they're buying is trust, reassurance, and the delivery of an expectation that they had in their heads, which you need to find out by speaking with them. And by creating that consistent user experience, no matter which angle that they're coming at from, you are seen as being a trusted provider. And once you've sold trust, once you have trust under your belt, everything else becomes 100 times easier.
Oh, I love that. That's exactly the direction we need to go in. So, G, where can our audience learn more about you or Kexino? Where can they go?
If you want to find out about me, the best way to get hold of me is on LinkedIn. Laureline, you may find this hard to believe, but did you know there is only one G Ranasinha on LinkedIn? Who'd have thunk, right? So you can find me on LinkedIn. I post videos twice a week about subjects like we've discussed today, really. And they're only 1 minute long, so they don't take up too much of your time. And I've been doing that for a number of years. So you can find me there. Otherwise, obviously, you can get me through the website, which is kexino.com, KEXINO.com. And we can have a conversation and discuss whether we're a good fit for your objectives as a business to move to the next level. And if we're not, we'll tell you we're not. Because we're not. We've been in business for 18 and a half years, okay? And you won't find a bad word said against us on Google, and there's a reason for that. Because if we have a number of rules that we follow to be able to allow a client to be a client, and if we can't affect a tangible, measurable change in your business over a particular time frame that we agree on, then we won't take you on as a client. And we're a small agency, so we have a finite number of resources, a finite number of clients we can work with at any one time. And we'd much rather work with someone who sees as what we're doing as being of value, and that we can work together on some really cool projects, rather than someone who needs to be convinced, because life's too short for that. Nobody pays me money to bang my head against a wall to try to convince somebody that the way they're thinking needs revision. I've been there, done that. Doesn't pay the bills.
No, cheers to that. And cheers to being the only one out of 900 plus million on LinkedIn with that name. Even my own name, which I didn't think was particularly unique, is the only one. So,
There you go. We've got something in common.
I know, right? Well, we have lots of things in common, but that's
Yeah,
just
we've
one
got
of
lots
many,
of things in
right? There
common.
we go. Now, last
Right.
question, G, as we wrap up the
Sure.
show. If we got to peek into that closet of yours up there in the northeastern part of France, and there was
Yeah.
some footwear that personified who you, G. Ranasinha, are, and which you embody in your personality, what does that footwear look like? Describe it to us, and why is it so you?
A piece of footwear. Um, I I would say probably a pair of flippers. And I would say a pair of flippers because just like a swan or a duck, everything looks very calm on the top, but everything's going pretty damn crazy underneath the waterline.
I love that. I've never heard that. 300 plus times I've asked that question. So
Well,
excellent.
you put me on the spot there. To be honest, I should have done my homework and researched more podcasts so that I had a stock answer. But that's best I could do off the top of my head.
Well, it is our signature question, and
Yes,
actually,
it
very
is.
few guests are prepared for it. But that's part of why I do it. It throws
Hmm.
people off and out of your, I must project this image for my company and the things that I do and be professional. And it gets us that couple of moments inside your head. And again, we talked about authenticity and touched on that in the podcast. It's who you are. You don't have to wear the designer, this, that, heels, fancy shoes. And people are like, yeah, I like flip-flops.
Right.
I like trainers. I like whatever
Yeah.
it is, right? And people just be real. And so it's fine. So it's my signature question. So with that, the show's a wrap. Thank you so much, G, for being on our show and best of continued luck.
I had a great time. Thanks again for inviting me.
And how about that fantastic intro by Touch Circle?